art school. Welcome to SHOWstudio. How are you both doing?
Really well.
It feels a bit weird to dive into talking about a show that now feels so far away.
I know.
So we said it was in January.
Feels like
Absolutely.
Does it?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I don't know. Yeah.
How does it feel to look back on the show in retrospect?
It's actually quite a good time, I think, for us, because we're starting on the next one now. So we've had that time to kind of like get out of our system, so we can come back and be a bit like.
It's a healthy time to look back on it.
Definitely.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was
Yeah,
a
we're really
fun
pleased
show.
with this one. So
One thing that's interesting about your brand is that you can, people often write your little blurb and say art school are defining a queer aesthetic and exploring non-binary systems and identities, but it's rare that really you guys get to properly explain.
yeah, completely.
Yeah, it's always someone
else's take.
Yeah, or that screenshot of like 5 minutes after the show when you explain to people that come and see you what it was about, but it's not always enough time to be able to talk about how we kind of begin working on something like this.
You know, it's only our fourth show, will be this one. I think it just so is always like almost a reaction to what we've just done almost,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? When we just did the Spring Summer
Kind of
show.
evolves, I think.
Yeah, we changed our way of working a lot, I think, for this show. I mean, we really honed in on who we were working with and really cut it all back and kind of, because we kind of really started to do so many things and we were like, okay, let's just go back and really think about what we want to do. And
I think when you get an opportunity like Fashionista, particularly when we moved on to Man, you suddenly get surrounded by quite a lot of people that you think at the time is probably a good thing, that it's just kind of the thing to do to have someone that works on casting, someone that works on styling and all those kind of things. And we suddenly realised that actually to say what we really want to say, it needs to be me and Tom that are saying it. So we stripped everything back and it was just me and Tom that worked on the entire collection, plus our hair and makeup team that have been there from the beginning, from my graduate show. So it felt quite true to what we were wanting to say. And really for us, it's much more of a, it is much more of an evolutionary process going from one show to another rather than specific themes.
I want to ask you about the evolution because it was very interesting that there were very specific things that were quite different with this show. For example, Tom didn't walk.
Yeah.
And definitely something that I picked up on was that the performative element of what you guys do, something that arguably became very synonymous with art school, this concept of performance, was much more stripped back.
Yeah.
In fact, take away perhaps the casting that makes you guys incredibly unique, and it was a traditional catwalk show. What was the decision there?
well, yeah.
It was much more of a darker tone, I think, that we had this season. We wanted to make a more serious comment, and that was probably why the performative element wasn't there in a way, because we didn't want to distract from that point. You know, I think queer voices are constantly under attack at the moment, and really for us it felt like a bit contradictory to then show something that was really heavily performative in like a celebratory way, because that wasn't really what we were trying to get at with the clothes or with the overall mood of the show. And we wanted to have that stripped down process that almost acted as like a definitive line in the sand. So everything we do from now on is kind of built up from that point. Because we've opened the world of art school now, I think, to a lot of people. So really this like refocusing of where we want to take the brand as we kind of graduate from Fashionista is really important to us. And also it's really important that it's really clear that me and Tom share in all processes of art school completely. So for him not to walk in the show for a season kind of just felt right.
Okay.
Although Tom acts as like a muse for everything that we do and tries on all the clothes, and we develop it in that way. So.
And looking specifically at the clothes, I was quite taken about the way that this element of uniform was present. And also we'll watch the show and you'll be able to hear the soundtrack, but there was Another Brick in the Wall, Pink Floyd song was a really heavy part of that soundtrack. Why was there that uniform concept?
Because it's school. It's the art school.
So my question also, are you guys schooling the fashion industry?
I hope so.
Ooh, yeah, trying to.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge sometimes for people to understand the kind of work that we produce and take it seriously in fashion. So maybe that's why there was these kind of continuing themes of like uniform and this like collective of people. It was almost kind of slightly army-ish in a way.
It was like, the whole for me, going into it was like Versace has been something that's really come back up into all our friends and us and what we think about. And, you know, Donatella is a big presence, and I just feel like that kind of glamour and that kind of severe, like straightened hair, big lip. And you know, that in beauty culture now has just become like a mainstream thing. You know, it's the Kim K thing, Kylie Jenner,
and seeing this new wave of models that, because we build all of the looks around the group of models, so we start with the casting and begin from there. This whole new wave of people that we met going out and socialising, but also through Instagram, came to the kind of fore last season, and these particular people really justified that mood for us.
Let's play the show, because I also want to talk a bit about the casting. You can tell me a bit about the models who walked for you.
So Nicole opening is our warrior queen, just amazing, just photographer. So everyone has their own kind of thing that we find particularly inspiring, and they're all really close friends. So Nicole and
everyone in the show is a friend.
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
are some models that also I recognised and worked with before.
So
only
everyone
one girl
is signed.
Kiara,
Kiara,
but we met her at a party.
Yeah.
She works with us too.
Ah, really? Yeah.
She does our shop shoots,
I've seen that.
Yeah, we met her at a party wearing like a distressed wedding dress. We were just like obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And I only found out she was signed later, so that came as a surprise.
Yeah, there she is.
Yeah, she was loving that blonde wig.
Yeah, lots of wigs as well.
Yeah.
So I think previously we'd always shown people quite almost naturally. There's always, even the first show, there was makeup,
But now we were kind of going more hyper-natural, so it's like this idea of like almost this queer army of individuals that all have like this united reference within their hair and makeup look, but it's the makeup treatments that we did almost made them seem alien.
This idea of identity in disguise that's obviously so prominent, but there wasn't very prominent characters who walked in the show. Princess Julia, for example, and again Julia Hobbs. And the interesting thing was some people were totally unrecognisable.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see that transformation. And also, we've been wanting to do something with Julia Hobbs and Princess Julia for ages, but being able to really interpret them in an art school way was really great.
She's amazing, Francesca.
Amazing trans girl.
I think that's, as it's like so much about really looking at someone's personal identity and what's true, but also so much about realising people want to be other people as well. People want to put on a disguise, and that's so much integral to their identity as well. So they love it.
So integral to fashion.
Yeah,
exactly.
There Julia is. I think even with the chainmail as well, that was a real kind of surprise introduction for us. But seeing that on someone like Julia, I think is so empowering as a woman.
And this is Alex. She's my friend from work. And as soon as I met her, I was like, oh my God, she's amazing. And, she's never done anything like this before.
Yeah.
So the whole day she was so nervous, like getting backstage. I just kept seeing her like, you okay? She's like, oh, I think
She was amazing.
I think with art school, that's really important to us because
one celebrity.
Yeah, these people for us are like our Adwa or, our Kate Moss. So we want to make them feel like that. I think that's really important. And also that goes back to why there isn't going to always be a performative element within some of the shows, because I think sometimes we just get this casting for us was like the most true casting I think we've ever done. So to have that group of people, it just felt like that was the message we wanted to say, and that it was in kind of the people's way of walking. And that's something that's really interesting us, I think, moving forward as well, the way people's own personalities can come out within the way that they walk, rather than perhaps there being some other performative element over the top. That really interests us.
I think it also allowed people to look a bit more closely at the clothes. And, arguably there have been prior seasons when you've done shows with a bit more performative element, and that's been the focus. And, I found that with this show, because it was stripped back, I found it actually easier as a writer, as a reporter, to be looking at the clothes and looking at the details.
Definitely. We had that in mind, though, I think, because we've done the first 2 seasons, and naturally, with our performative people, I think we're just like, if we do this, we can do this. Especially when we moved on to the catwalk, we were like,
Yes.
oh, we've got 100 ideas we can do, we're going to put them all in one show. And I think it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I still look back on that show and think it was such a special, like,
But that for us
kind of
was
crazy celebration of
yeah,
things.
it was a real time to like release the creative energy then, because we hadn't ever imagined we'd get that opportunity. So now that we've kind of done that process, we can be a bit more calculated mentally about what we want to show when, and kind of leave things on the back burner to come up later on and develop it in that way. And that's what's so good about Man in general, because it gives you that time to develop all those things before you then have to step out on your own and do something that's completely focused on you as an individual.
Well, tell me a bit about working with Man. So you're showing with this trio of designers. And obviously you guys opened the show. How is it working in that process?
So, I mean, Man has been like a real catalyst for us and quite an amazing opportunity. And Fashionista have been really supportive from the beginning in giving us that chance, because I think for a brand like ours to come to Fashionista is quite a big step for them to take us on, because it's something quite different, and it's very different from the normal Man kind of designers that have came before us.
Yeah, of course.
But it does feel like within the current trio of designers that we're in, there's a real movement happening there. And each of us are completely different in our own rights, which is really, really interesting. I think the Man show now raises real credible arguments as to what fashion can be and where it can be in different calendars, because I think there needs to be a lot less focus on whether it says menswear or women's wear, and more focused on the brand and what they're trying to do. And for us, it's totally the right thing being in this format, because we can show the work so that it's shown in men's, but we can also then offer it to drop in women's pre-collection seasons.
Smart, yeah.
And all round, it just feels like a really nice environment to sit within.
I always found when I was sitting in the show, it felt almost like a paradox, like a joke in many ways, to be seeing the show that you're showing under the three letters Man.
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
And I wondered, what does it feel like to be showing under menswear, something that's so specifically menswear? And why do you think, I don't want to put words in mouth, but my opinion was that women's wear wasn't necessarily able to be as fluid and to show that. And I'm interested in why menswear designers are questioning gender.
I think
maybe because it's without that, women's wear just has such a, that you've got to really deliver in the hype, you've got to get, everyone's fighting for that Instagram story, and it's a really blow up, and to be that thing, be one of the LFW highlights or whatever. So I feel like people maybe have a bit more space. Menswear just feels freer, and there's a bit more of a calmer kind of, maybe they just naturally can feel more experimental, even in some of the more classic menswear, you kind of get a little bit more
and
fluid edge.
I think that journey really began with people like Grace Wells-Bonner that were pushing on those kind of boundaries when it was still really, really fixated upon the tailoring brands, and then like the streetwear brands that were showing what was LCM. So I think then with like brands like ours and Charles's that have came through, it's really given kind of a really different voice. I don't think we would have had that opportunity in women's. I think it probably would get absorbed into the show business of like all of these massive shows. And
yeah, women's is so competitive now, I really feel, and I keep saying that, you know, because we are showing, we're non-binary, and by heart we're non-binary in our personality and everything, in our identities, but when you see the product on a rail, okay, most people are going to think it's women's wear, but we're showing on a man schedule in a man's showroom, and we've now got to face those kinds of how we make it work amongst that kind of discussion. I don't know, like, we're quite adamant not on moving into women's wear spectrum, but you never know what would happen if we did. I don't know, almost maybe we should test the waters.
Yeah, I mean, for us, with the point of the brand is meant to really hammer home to people that these clothes can be worn by anyone. So for us, if a store can't quite make that step yet, we can make that step within the statement we're making within the show. And as we grow as a brand, we can adapt price point wise and things like that. It enables people to buy into it that maybe are a bit younger at the moment and can't afford it yet. So I think it's really important that that statement's made within London Collections Men. I think otherwise it wouldn't be being made, probably. We've definitely taken the attitude that it needs to be more of a slow burn situation where we can take time to build up our relationships with retailers, because we don't want to compromise on the message or on art school's approach.
It's interesting to me, the juxtaposition between needing to make these sales and doing something that you guys are doing, which is standing so firmly for what you believe in. And I wonder, do you think you'll be able to continue doing that?
I think we just have to
we're
be
at that
smart with
crossroads
it.
now. I really feel like we are like almost coming to our end of Fashion East, and I think that kind of the discussions and on where we move forward, and what's our product, like what are we selling, and to me it's just so important that we have made this statement of what art school is, and that it's a real movement, it's the people, it's the energy, and it just stands for all these things.
And that's what makes people want to buy into it ultimately. So I think what we probably hadn't realised is that when we stepped into Man, how much of a response it would get doing something like we're doing on the back of like the Man show. So I think it's taken the last 2 seasons even for people to be looking at it seriously, because I think when people speak to us, that's when they kind of realise that we take it very seriously and that this is, everything to us. Whereas I think when people maybe saw that first show, they don't always have that impression. Maybe they think that it's kind of a flash in the pan thing. We've been working our entire lives to get this opportunity, and we are forging really good relationships with stockists that we already currently stock in and new ones. So it's really just about a smart approach to it.
And tell me a bit about the collaborations. Obviously this season, the work that you've been doing with Dominic Meyer was very, very prominent. And obviously with Swarovski, these were both combined. We can have a look at some of the looks so we can get a little bit of a close-up. But really, I want to know a bit about how, for example, this piece came into production. What was the process there?
So how we kind of start when thinking about a look for someone, that top was for Johan, the boy that's wearing it, from day one.
So just to clarify, so each look has been specifically designed around the person themselves.
And it adapts and changes as we do the fittings. So we notoriously do all our fittings really, really early, even with final garments, because we'll change them if someone's not happy or confident in wearing it. And that's really important to us, because we've also seen when it comes to kind of stockists seeing us, that they'll bring images of certain characters that they recognise in their customer and want to buy those. So it reacts in a lot of ways. So for that one, we love Johan's tattoos. He has the most amazing tattoos across his body.
Okay,
so he has like 667. It's like a poem.
Okay, wait, so these are his tattoos?
These are his real tattoos.
There was a moment when I was thinking maybe that was part of the
No, it's his real tattoos.
So these are his real tattoos.
So
they look so good.
Yeah, exactly. So for spring summer, the previous show to this, he walked with a corset on, and you could see.
Oh yeah. Was he
really
pulling it up?
Yeah. So we wanted to create something that was like our version of a tattoo top.
Okay, hot.
And Dominic, as well as being an artist, also tattoos people with his drawings. So we really like the idea of creating these Swarovski pieces that were almost like tattoos across the body. So we got Dominic to draw it.
So he drew loads of illustrations, a lot of them quite graphic, all in an abstract way.
Yeah.
And we kind of just picked out, I think we went for like everything had a flower in it, didn't it? So it was the peas and the flower and the worm, and then the big flower.
How did they go into production? So you mentioned that you use...
Yeah, so we work with Hand and Lot, which is one of the oldest embroiderers in the country, and we develop so Dominic draws them up bigger once we've selected them, then we send them off with the crystal, and they hand bead them to look the same as his drawings, which is quite a difficult thing to do.
That's no mean feat.
It's so exciting to get them back, because you just literally feel like he's drawn them in crystal. It's amazing. And I just think this way of using them is quite interesting, because they're actually really wearable things, someone can just wear particularly the top version over underneath something. But
I think the wonderful thing to me was that it managed to subvert both what Dominic does with his drawings that feel quite like, raw, and they're normally on flesh that's raised and bleeding, and also Swarovski, which is a brand that you wouldn't necessarily associate with drawings such as Dominic's.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we wanted to work with Swarovski in a different way this season, just because we've been quite accustomed to working with the jewelling in the way that I worked with Grace on it.
It was more kind of stone set on a jacket or something like that. It was nice.
So we were just thinking how we can do it in more of an art school way, really, that was even more kind of adapted to our own world. So we're really pleased with them, and I really love Liza in that with the blue shirt underneath.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And when you designed this piece, were you thinking specifically about this body?
Yeah.
And the way that, because it is remarkable that you do have a real true sense of diversity in this. You're not only looking at identity politics and gender politics, but you're looking at race and size, and it's really wonderful. I think incredibly refreshing to see that on a catwalk.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we realised until recently how much like that is a thing. I think we're quite naive, I think.
Yeah, it's not really calculated. We just work with the people that we find inspiring, and that continues to evolve, and it doesn't really matter how they identify, how old they are, what size they are, because it feels right for us. And they're incredible people, like Harriet, who's wearing the big black coat.
Oh, yeah.
She used to live with us. Yeah. She's an amazing inspiration to the brand. And really for us, like, defines our woman, really. So to have someone that kind of empowering in our show is really important. The same with Ellie, for a black girl with braids to be able to wear something like that, and us to give her the confidence to wear that.
She's the life model, though.
She was loving it. But for her to do that and represent us in that way was a really special moment. And these are all people that have been entwined in our lives for years, so it's really special to have them around backstage at the show, and it feels very much like a family or collective.
And you said she defines what it means to be an art school girl, but obviously definitions and labels, and they're also important to what you do, but also shaking those is important to what you do. How much do you feel defined by labels and people saying art school is a queer collective?
That's so loose as a term, though, so I don't think we're that like...
What does queer mean to you?
It's just like a big blob, and it means you can do anything and be anything and just be like...
For me, identifying as a queer person only really came after meeting Tom and understanding that I could wear these nails or like dress how I wanted to.
Look at you now.
Not be defined by my masculinity.
But you're never that defined by
No, but it's kind of... I've seen how so many of these people have came on an evolution since we first met them even, and I think that's really a definition of queerness. It's not having like a barrier of any kind of mental place where you think you need to look a certain way. But equally, there could be a woman just on the street that we would identify as queer that's going in and buying something from Selfridges from us. But, I think
that's why there's such a bleed over now.
Yeah.
When I was talking about, the Kim K thing and the Kylie Jenner, and because I've got a younger sister, so the way I look at it is, and just Instagram culture and all memes and RuPaul, and that is so part of now what's becoming mainstream. Maybe it's just girls who like that kind of thing, but I don't know, there's just such a crossover, and what's really heavy queer influences, it's all like mishmash now. There isn't any real like...
It's about inclusivity, and it's about, like you're saying, it's cross-pollination. It's just about not putting those lines and saying this is not what we want, but opening up and accepting all.
And also I think it's important that queer is not just a gay thing. Queer defines a whole host of different people on every spectrum, on every kind of platform, and that's really important because I think
Judith Butler wrote that queer is not specifically about sexuality or gender. What queer is the capability of each individual to create their own identity and define that and redefine that in their own terms.
Wow. There you go. And that's art school, it's about each person. I mean, we, of course, make the look and we make the outfit, but it's all so much a conversation and just what the mood is right now, and that's why it's shifting and changing. We are finding that, and yeah, it's hard because you're trying to also have to create a brand, and you have to create
and
that
may
thing.
mean for us that there's not one specific product that necessarily defines art school as a brand. It's not one certain type of print or one certain type
Just
of
the blobs.
Yeah,
It's still trying to block the
more
blog.
I love the blog. So to look to the future, what do you know, obviously it's your last season with Fashionista coming up, feeling a bit nervous.
Yes.
Scary.
Yeah,
but it's exciting. We'd like it to be kind of a celebration of everything that we've achieved getting to this point, and with everyone that supported us, and really defining the art school world in one collective show. So there might be a bit of performative element coming back in slightly.
Watch out. It's me on stilts. It's me coming down.
From the ceiling.
Oh my God, gagging for that. Get them out.
I'm going to fly in.
All right, well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much.